Conspiracy culture. Right now, I wanted to discuss atheism, democracy, and the Enlightenment. So, to start off with atheism, I remember there was this quote by Albert Pike where he said that we shall unleash the atheists and the nihilists and provoke a formidable social cataclysm or some type of disaster by normalizing atheism and by like kind of as a side effect also nihilism, because I believe that Albert Pike realized, right, that atheism is fundamentally it's kind of linked to nihilism in a lot of different ways. Right? You can easily rationalize why atheism would correspond in some ways to nihilism, right? Because what does atheism allege? Atheism alleges that we're just accidental creatures, right? We weren't created; we're just random byproducts of a cosmic accident. We don't really have any real purpose to our existence and stuff. So in this way, you can kind of easily see how atheism would relate to nihilism, and you can kind of following. I would say during the Middle Ages, which was, in my opinion, the last period of time where like there was genuinely religious people in Europe, especially, right? Like genuinely religious people that believed in the Bible, people that believed in like Jesus and the Christian doctrine. That was probably Christianity was being taken seriously in Europe up until the Middle Ages, and then from entering into like the 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, and then up to now the 21st centuries, right? Europe quickly was becoming more and more a-religious, right? Religion was kind of seen as just a joke, right? Atheism was quickly becoming normalized, and you can even feel the effects in this modern age we're living in, right? Atheism is kind of dominant in academia. Like most of it's very rare that you would find any type of theologian among the most respected academics, right? Like in academia, like it's almost implied at atheism and secularism and this materialist way of thinking. That's what you should have. That's what should be equipped in your mind. That's the correct way of thinking and stuff. That's the correct dogma and ideology and stuff. It's also heavily implied that religion is kind of primitive and archaic, is something that should not be even considered now. It's all implied, right? And of course, atheism, like cartoons like Rick and Morty, not just Rick and Morty, like Futurama, various other different cartoons, and even movies, right? They were kind of packaging in like atheism, this idea of that the fact that there is no God and that's the actual truth. You should just accept it and stuff. Religion is kind of for idiots, essentially. That's why a lot of TV shows and cartoons are kind of trying to portray and give the impression to us of, just like kind of to bring it back to Albert Pike. He said, "We shall unleash the atheists and nihilists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, some type of disaster, by normalizing atheism and by extension also normalizing nihilism." As I've already explained, they go hand in hand, both atheism and nihilism, right? Yeah, because if we weren't created, we're just random accidents, and our existence is kind of absurd, right? Yeah, so atheism, and of course atheism, it's not really like the idea that there is no God. There's nothing else attached to that idea, right? A lot of people, they kind of link atheism to Darwinism, right? Because with the theory of evolution being more, with its normalization in science and academia, like creationism was kind of almost thrown out of the way, right? It was thrown into the trash can, to the dustbin, right? Because we're clearly evolved, right? Where there was no God making us, where we weren't engineered in any type of way. So creationism is stupid, essentially, and dumb. It's primitive, and you should reject it, and you should embrace evolution. And there's kind of a lot of, because of course, I don't want to make any kind of false arguments. Right? I know that Darwinism, evolution, is not directly linked to atheism. Right? Atheism is just the simple idea that there is no God out there governing the universe. But Darwinism and evolution is often used, right, to justify atheism. Right? Because if we were clearly evolved, so there was no creator or God, and in the history of anything, right? Where evolution explains everything. We're just evolved byproducts of random chemical accidents and processes that were occurring who knows how long ago, right? Of course, abiogenesis, right, which is kind of, you can go, the causal line of history, if you can go all the way back, like what sparked life, right? Abiogenesis, that's completely unsubstantiated. There's never been one case that's been demonstrated where something could come out of nothing, essentially, right? Life can just randomly generate itself and become more and more complex and sophisticated. That's never been demonstrated. Of course, no, actually, you can kind of bring it all the way back to the beginning of the universe, right? Atheism strongly suggests that the universe is just a cosmic act, like nothing came from nothing, essentially, right? That's completely illogical. It's never been demonstrated, right? It's an absurd belief that can't be proven to be true, right? That nothing can essentially come from nothing for no reason. That's mind-blowing, right? It's not insane. And that's what atheism kind of suggests, right? That nothing can come from nothing for no reason, and that's why we're here. It's not stupid. But to kind of summarize everything, right? Atheism is kind of, you can feel like how it's quickly being normalized in specifically Western culture, but Western culture is also the dominant culture on Earth, right? Like all of our social trends, they originate in Western Europe and America, which is just an extension of Europe, and then they get exported all around the world, right? Even like in many Arab countries, people have this misconception that Arabs are some type of troglodyte people. They reject all forms of Western culture. That's clearly not true, because if you go to Saudi Arabia, if you go to UAE or Kuwait, you'll come across McDonald's, you'll come across a lot of Western food restaurants and stuff like that. They're clearly being influenced by the West, and it's not hard to figure this out. But kind of anyway, right, atheism is quickly getting normalized in a Western culture. I shouldn't even say it is already normalized, right? It's dominant in academia, right? It's kind of implied that atheism is the most intellectual, logical view and path that needs to be taken if you want to get, if you want to be like taken seriously in academia, right? But yeah, so, and you look at like a lot of like Russia, Eastern Europe, like following the communist regimes there, right? They were anti-religious, right? They were extremely like anti-religious, and this kind of demonstrates what Albert Pike was talking about. Right? In Russia, there was like all of the communist leaders, they committed massacres, millions of people were slaughtered and killed, right? They were just killed for petty reasons, essentially, right? Because why not? Because we're just random. We're not anything special, right? According to atheism, we're just like cosmic. We're just like we're essentially just random jumbled atoms that originate from a cosmic accident for no reason, and we're just meaningless creatures, essentially. And so why not just get rid of us, slaughter us for for whatever reason, right? And that's what happened, right? Stalin, Mao Zedong, these communist regimes, because communism was heavily against religion. It was like in those various communist regimes, science was kind of overemphasized, right? And you can see the effects, and you can still see the effects today in these various countries that were former communist countries, like Russia, like as high as the suicide rate, man. It's kind of insane, but yeah, this kind of does demonstrate what Albert Pike was talking about, right? Morals quickly become kind of just matters of opinion, they just become kind of nonsensical, right? If you believe in atheism, if you believe that the idea that we weren't put here, we were just random accidents, and our existence is kind of meaningless, right? But yeah, I don't want to kind of dwell too long on this. You can see what Albert Pike was talking about. You can kind of even feel the effects of it, like what he was saying about how atheism will bring in nihilism as a side effect, right? That's why, in Europe and America and a lot of other westernized countries, depression and suicide are becoming more and more common, right? More and more people are becoming unfulfilled and depressed because they only have their material desires. They don't have any higher spiritual purpose now, right? Because Christianity has kind of been pushed out of the way, and there's nothing to fill that void and stuff. And this perfectly ties into what Albert Pike was saying, because without any type of spiritual purpose, we just become completely we just we just become kind of sad. Our existence becomes extremely sad and depressing and stuff. We become meaningless creatures. All right, now, so the Enlightenment, which kind of does tie into a lot of the atheism and stuff, ties into how atheism was normalized, right? There was, in the French Revolution, right, there was this period of time in Europe following the Middle Ages. There was this rationalist philosophy that was quickly becoming more and more prevalent, right? It was becoming normalized, and it made this great push against religion in Europe following the Middle Ages and up until now the 21st century and stuff. So Europe was kind of going against religion and something that kind of it created this push, and then that obviously influenced other neighboring countries and territories. And you can still feel its effects to the modern age, right? Because now religion's kind of been neutered, so to speak, right? You go to America, if you can get a Bible, I rip it to pieces. Do anything you want to it, nothing's going to happen to you, which is kind of, I believe that's actually not bad. That's not a bad thing. Actually, I believe in secularism and stuff like that. You should be able to do that and stuff, but it's kind of like, before the Middle Ages, you would be kind of lynched probably if you tried doing that, right? There was this rationalist movement in Europe following the Middle Ages, and they kind of pushed against religion, and now because of that, we have more freedom to do what we want to. And you can say, well, why is that a bad thing? It's not. It's like with atheism. I'm not making any type of arguments that any of this is horrible. Like any of these social changes are bad. I'm just kind of pointing them out to kind of inform you and stuff. Of course, I don't want to dwell on this too long. Now it's time to finally move on to democracy, which is probably the most manipulative system. It's a system of control used by the elite, in my opinion. Because first of all, what is democracy? Well, democracy essentially is mob rule, right? The majority determine the election results, right? Any minority groups don't have enough voting power to affect any type of social change. Their opinions just become completely worthless, right? That's why democracy is kind of absurd. A lot of people have this false idea that democracy empowers you as an individual. It makes your vote mean something, right? Your opinions have some type of effect on society, but that's not true. Democracy is mob rule. The majority determine the election results. Minority groups don't have any type of voting power, right? Because they get outvoted by the larger mob of people. And in this mob, right, they can get manipulated. Propaganda, we still suffer. A lot of people think that propaganda was something that was just only used maybe in the 19th century, 19th, 20th, early 21st centuries, and when Russia and America were going at each other and fighting wars, Cold Wars, whatever. And they think propaganda was only used in Nazi Germany and Europe, right, during following World War I and II and stuff. But no, propaganda is still used today, right? You go on, if you go on any news outlet, any news media, right, you get given a specific image of a specific type of people, right? You get given these stereotypes, right? Propaganda is used to manipulate us through media and stuff, through music, through movies, all of these different things in pop culture, in our society. They kind of shape our ideas on what is right, what is wrong, what's appropriate, what's not good. Social engineering, essentially, right? Hollywood, that's probably tainted a lot of people's ideas on morality, on government, on what's the appropriate thing to do in specific circumstances. This is propaganda, this is social engineering, and this is why I believe democracy is probably the perfect tool that the elites use to control us, because they first of all give us the false idea that we're making our own decisions, first of all, right? And then they just kind of veil it up to kind of make this seem more real and stuff. And then they use their various media outlets to kind of engineer our minds to educate. Education really is indoctrination, right? In school, right? When you're getting taught, human rights, whatever, any type of topic, right? You get given a specific interpretation of that topic, right? You get indoctrinated, not educated, right? You don't get, there's always an alternative account of any type of topic you could be like researching and learning about, right? History, we're only given a very specific, limited interpretation, right, of history. The history that was allowed and given, passed down according to like who was in charge and who felt what he was thinking is right and who thought that. It's kind of, you can see it was biased, right? History is obviously biased. It's written by the winners and rulers and conquerors and whatever. Not just history, any type of, like, anything, any type of topic or field covering morality, you get given a very specific interpretation. But I want to kind of go back to democracy and stuff. It is a tool of manipulation. We're given a false idea of freedom, and then we're clearly manipulated by all of these media outlets and various other forms of social engineering. And then the hidden oligarchs, they kind of reap the benefits of this very flawed system, right? Democracy, mob rule, right? Mob rule. Minority groups don't have any voting power, right? They get outvoted by the mob. The majority determine the election results. It's a manipulative system, right? It's actually the perfect system, because if I was like some type of oligarch, I would just, red in circus, and then social engineering, give people the false ideas and stuff. And then they'll believe that these ideas are their own, and they'll just kind of contribute to the corrupt system and to you becoming some type of a ruler or whatever. So yeah, democracy is heavily flawed. And you can kind of, even like the ancient Greek philosophers weren't so fond of democracy, right? Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, a lot of them, you can find a lot of quotes from them. If they actually existed, because history is kind of, it's hard to know if it was actually true, right? We only get given a specific interpretation of history, but regardless, right? Democracy is a flawed system,